Interstate 10 freeway spotlights Los Angeles' handling of the freeway encampments. In 2023, we openly talk about the homeless encampments underneath freeway systems, not just in LA, but Seattle, Portland, you name it. Anywhere that's got a freeway, there's an encampment, right? In these blue cities where this is just a thing that has been let happen. Let's get into this one because this fire most recently that shut down one of the major interstates into LA, it puts a little bit of a spotlight on the situation. Let's get into it. Here we go. The company that leased the property where the blaze began had complained to city officials about fires started by homeless people. Now, we all heard the story from Gavin Newsom. We heard the story from the mayor of Los Angeles. You know what? We know it's arson, but there's no reason to blame the homeless community or the unhoused. Can't blame them. Because if we do, and we're probably never going to know, it'll just be like, we're not really sure who set this fire. But this, if you haven't heard about this one, this was a massive fire. And it literally shut down Interstate south of downtown LA, major traffic, hundreds of thousands of cars daily. It's 4 or 5 lanes wide. It's a massive freeway system. So it just took all that pressure from a freeway and put it on the side roads till they got it cleaned up. And thankfully yesterday, I'm recording this for you on a Tuesday, and it was actually on Sunday night, they opened it back up. So it was much, much sooner than what they had originally thought, because this fire, they thought caused all kinds of structural damage. They're going to have to take the freeway down. This is all because they are allowing homeless people to live wherever the F they want, right? Yeah, can't really work out what to do with all these folks. We offer them housing and they don't take it. Don't really know what to do, but don't blame the homeless population on this massive fire that caused this. We know it caused it. We know it for a fact it's arson. Do we specifically know it's No, but that's why I'm reading this story, because there's all of these clues, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist. Even a real estate guy can kind of figure out what you've got going on here. And it's an issue of accountability. And in LA, there is none. Seattle, we've been trying to kick folks out from underneath the freeways for a long time, but it's invariably, and Portland has too, invariably it's that whack-a-mole. Because until you start getting these folks into some kind of treatment, they ain't going anywhere, because they're not going in to city, county, state sponsored housing, because there's rules there. And their lifestyle currently, the reason they're in a tent, because they don't live by rules. They want to keep doing their drugs, do their thing, no curfew. Yeah. The fire erupted after midnight under a Los Angeles freeway where 16 people were living, including a pregnant woman who was only weeks from giving birth. Man, back when I was a kid, you didn't have these encampments the way that they are now. You had some very, very small kinds of deals, and it was this big uproar in Seattle, big uproar in a lot of these areas. And then eventually we just kind of gave up and just let them go. We used to have a homeless community called Nicholsville. It was after the mayor, Greg Nichols. Nicholsville. It was like, all right, you guys are all going here. Now it's called the jungle. As the flames engulfed the storage yard and the inferno's heat melted some of the thoroughfare's steel guardrails, yeah, it was that big of a fire. Melted steel. What's the meltdown point of steel? It's a lot. I don't know. What's the temperature of that? And concrete pillars. Rescue crews were able to get everyone out safely. It's a miracle nobody died in that, right? But the disaster has brought renewed criticism of officials' inability to get homeless residents off the street, leaving tens of thousands living in perilous locations across the nation's second largest city. You know, I joke incessantly about living in a van down by the river, because that's one of the greatest comedic sketches of all time with Chris Farley. I mean, he was literally just epic in that scene. He's a motivational speaker. Forget his name. But, you know, this whole notion of living in a van down by the river, Well, take that a step further. That's, that's off-road living, right? When you're living underneath the freeway, that is a whole nother level of just danger to those people, right? I mean, that's not healthy, especially if you are, however, 8 months pregnant and you're going to give birth. You got all the toxins coming off the freeway, let alone if you've ever lived close to a freeway, in the air is little tiny particulates of rubber from the tires. It gets over everything. It just does. It's freeway living, right? 3 years ago, as part of a court order related to a years-long lawsuit accusing the city and county of Los Angeles of not doing enough to address homelessness, a judge wrote that he was concerned about 7,000 people living under freeways, calling it unreasonably dangerous. So we've got concern and it's unreasonably dangerous. County Supervisor Hilda Solis said officials have since set aside nearly $300 million to create 6,700 shelter beds, but rows of tents and makeshift shelters are still a common sight under overpasses and along highway ramps. Yeah. And in Seattle here, it is recognized that if you get a spot underneath the freeway, you're probably going to be able to have it for a long time because the city is going to need to coordinate with the Department of Transportation because it's underneath an entity that it isn't really controlled by the city, by Seattle Department of Transportation. So you have to get Washington State Department of Transportation. It's a state deal, right? Area underneath the freeway. So these areas are picked out because they know that there's going to be this back and forth because the state, it just works on freeways. It doesn't have an encampment clearing mechanism. And so oftentimes you will find people living there and then you've got to have all these different, jurisdictions come in. All right, we're going to do a big clean out. And then what happens? You're just playing whack-a-mole. Those people will, be pushed out of there for a little while and they'll come back. Kind of like in San Francisco. One of my other podcasts today is going to be on, it took one day in San Francisco in the Tenderloin for all of the riffraff and their inherent shenanigans to come screaming right back after the APEC conference, welcoming President of China to San Francisco. Remember they had that big communism kind of deal. Let's celebrate communism. Got the leader of China coming in because they're going to invest a bunch of money in San Francisco. You got that whole kind of deal. Literally, there's a Fox News story about how it took one day for the riffraff to come back and be selling their drugs and human trafficking and poop on the sidewalk and all that stuff. Everything that everybody knows. All right. Yeah. And it was cleaned up only for the APEC conference. It's like, all right, let her rip. Let's go back to normal. Let's take off the makeup. We put makeup on the pig. We made it look a little bit better. And now we're going to get back to real living San Francisco style, right? All right. So we've got unreasonably dangerous and we've got concerned. I love it when these entities say, I am concerned that somebody might be murdered out here. I have great concern. It's like, just do your job, get something done, and you wouldn't have to be concerned because it doesn't really feel like you're that concerned. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and California Governor Gavin Newsom are now under pressure to not only reopen the section of Interstate 10 as fast as possible, but to find out who started the fire and what oversight the state had on the property. Puts a little bit of a spotlight on this issue, doesn't it? All right. How are we going to prevent this from moving forward? And that's the big crux, isn't it? You're not. Because unless you get these folks into treatment, these folks are, whether it's, addiction or mental health care, unless you get them into something like that, because so many of these folks suffer from both of these and oftentimes a combination, you're not going to get them off the streets because time and time and time again, these folks are offered housing and, they'll ask, well, is there a manager involved? And if the answer is yes, they're out. they're a no-go. Maybe at their own tiny home. Yeah, but those are few and far between. And, maybe a hotel room, that's always a temporary solution, right? Because you got to have those hotel rooms open for all these people that, need the temporary housing just right then. And then they're going to bounce out. Well, yeah, need to go back on the streets, do my drugs. Thanks for the brief respite from living on the streets. But you got to remember, so many of these people, this is where they want to be. They want to continue doing their lifestyle. These are not people that are scratching and clawing to get back into society and get a job and work and pay taxes and all that stuff. They're not doing that. So, you can build all the housing you want in the world. Your 6,700 shelter beds for your 7,000 people, but it's not going to do any good. And that's the notion, housing first. If we just get them some housing, everything else will fall in line. Well, how's that working out? The more housing you build, the more people will come, specifically to LA. Because I basically state that it's drug tourism, meaning people want that lifestyle. Hey, where are you going to go where it's the best? Where are you going to go that, if you're on vacation, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the best place that you can afford. Maybe if it's the sunniest place, maybe it's got the best hotel. It's the easiest plane ride wherever. You're going to go there, right? Because it's got all the amenities that you want. Same thing with drug addicts. Hey, where can I go to live free, get all the drugs that I want that are affordable, that are plentiful, and if I get busted, I won't go to jail and do any real time? LA? I'm there because they got the weather, right? They've got the weather, got the handouts. Bass has warned repeatedly against assumptions that homeless residents started the blaze, but that hasn't stopped speculation and blame. If you've got a homeless community piled up around this area where this fire was, which is my understanding that was the case, then you're going to have some speculation. And I don't think we'll ever find out. I mean, are they going to blame some outstanding citizen for setting a fire to some pallets that got this bad boy blaze going? You know what I mean? It's like, let's be reasonable here. Let's be reasonable. Homeless folk, somebody in the homeless community set this fire, because that happens all the time. How many fires do we talk about here on News for Reasonable People? You got fires left and right. This is not a one-off. If it was, then I'd say, okay, yeah, but there's just not a lot of examples of fires. And I've done podcasts on this where I've listed off, I can list off half a dozen fires right off the top of my head that are known to be set by the homeless community, literally on freeways or under freeways. Ship Canal Bridge encampment in Seattle is a prime example. Big blaze caught fire there, Interstate 5, I-5, and it set off fireworks going into traffic on Interstate 5. It's not like this is a one-off, this Interstate 10 here. It's not a one-off. This happens all the time. But it makes the city look bad. It makes the state look bad. It makes the county look bad because somebody's got to do something because it's concerning. What if that blaze was going and, had some major impact to the actual cars on it? I think LA got super lucky on this one. You dodged a bullet because number one, you didn't have to bring the freeway down. They cleaned it up. And traffic started going just after about a week. It just wasn't as bad as they thought the damage was. LA, you got lucky. LA residents, you got lucky if you were impacted by this. I showed some footage from German and Venice last week on the impact of the freeway and where it was. And it wasn't as bad, apparently, and they're able to open it up. And all right, guys, you can drive on it. It's all good. It's all good. Just go for it. Be fine. Late Wednesday, an attorney for Apex Development Incorporated, which leased the property under the freeway when they were storing all kinds of work equipment and stuff, said the company had complained to city officials numerous times about fires started by homeless people on or near the property. And then you got Mayor Karen Bass. There's no reason to assume this was set by a member of the homeless community, the unhoused. Yeah, there is. There's this reason, this reason, this reason, and this reason. So we're going to assume that a member of the homeless encampment surrounding this area, who knows where they're from, right? I mean, they could just been walking by, get some drugs, sell some drugs, buy some stolen goods, sell some stolen goods, do whatever it is that they do, right? You know, whatever it is. I think we can blame. I think odds are, I can't say emphatically that this was a homeless person that set this fire or a group of homeless people because I don't know, and we will probably never know. But if I were to bet on who set this fire, yeah, and I'm not much of a betting man, I would push the chips all in this favor, right? I'm in. I'm going to lay that bet down because that's an odds on bet, right? In addition, Apex had denied access to the site since October, attorney Manik Tari said. All right. Newsom has called the company bad actors. Let's blame the bad actors because these guys aren't cooperating. We got some bad actors in here. Did the bad actors set their own place on fire? Is that what we're saying happened? And the state is in litigation with Apex seeking $78,000 in back rent for the property and claiming the company sublet to unauthorized tenants. So the company is complaining to the state whom they're leasing the property from, hey, you got all kinds of nut jobs running around here setting stuff on fire. And then Newsom comes back with, they're bad actors. They're not paying. Well, they're probably not paying their rent because they're protesting what's going on, which is you've just got, pyromaniacs that are whacked out on meth or fentanyl or whatever, roaming the streets, living there. We know they're living there. We know they were living all around there. This isn't that hard to work out. But don't blame the unhoused community. We don't know for sure. That's literally what we're told. And you're sitting there watching it going, I'm not believing you at all. You are not disclosing the full truth to us. And you are asking us to accept a very, very half truth, which is, we don't really know who it was. All right. It's unfortunate that Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass have used this incident to speculate and mischaracterize Apex and its principals as bad actors to excuse their own failures to adequately address the public safety issues caused by the unhoused, the attorney said in an emailed statement. Spokesperson for the governor disputed the attorney's claims. California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection currently believes the fire was caused by arson, the criminal act of deliberately setting fire to property. The criminal act of in a fenced-off area that Apex was responsible for maintaining while they continued to assert rights under the lease, said Izzy Gardone with Newsom's office. Okay, but they've been bitching that the state isn't doing anything, and they've been bitching for a long time, right? Hey, you got homeless people setting fires. Can you do something about that? Nah, because you're a bad actor. You're not paying rent. Well, we're not paying rent because you're not doing jack about all these lunatics running around here setting fires. And then you've got a big fire under the interstate that's just whoosh, melting steel and concrete, right? Federally required January count estimated that on any given night, there were more than 75,500 homeless people in the county. That is a big city, folks. That is a big city. That's why LA's got so many problems. That's why so many celebrities, if I can, I'm getting the heck out of Dodge. Remember that mass exodus of all those famous people at the beginning of the pandemic? Just happened en masse. I podcasted on so many of those. That was just easy pickings, right? Joe Rogan left, all those folks, Ben Shapiro, all those folks just kind of up and left because things got really, really bad. You had the CDC and their infinite wisdom was like, no, even though these guys are all outside, don't sweep the encampments because you're going to spread the Rona around. And so things just literally exploded homeless encampment wise. So since 2015, homelessness has increased by 70% in the county and 80% in the city because of drug tourism. It's not affordable housing. These folks want to be there. It's LA. You've got sunshine all the time. Yeah, you got some heat in the summer, But, you want to live in a tent in Seattle and have 300 days of rain? I mean, take your pick, right? A little bit of heat during the summer. It's a pretty mild climate. Advocates over the years have sued the city and county to demand more action. Investigators have made a preliminary determination that the blaze was intentionally set behind a fence where businesses were storing materials under I-10, but they said they do not know who started it. And you know what? Even if they do find out who it is, they're not going to disclose that, I don't think, in my opinion, because it's such a bad look. We know this is a terrible scenario. You shouldn't be living, under the freeway in a tent. That's a no-go for so many reasons, right? Mel Tilakaratne, an advocate for homeless people and founder of nonprofit The Shower of Hope, said Saturday's blaze could have been a horrible human catastrophe. We were lucky that nobody got hurt, he said, but something like this could happen at any other encampment at any other time. It's just a tragedy waiting to happen. I thought, the fact that nobody was hurt or killed, to me, was just straight out fortunate for everybody involved. Tilla Karatne said that he hopes disasters like this shine a light on how homeless resources and facilities need to be staged in more neighborhoods to keep people away from highways. All right, moving from the highways into your hood. All right, so if you're in LA, you're going to need to take some homeless people in your backyard because you've got to get them away from the freeways. You think about that. How's that? How about them apples? Yeah, that's not happening, right? You got the whole not in my backyard thing for good reason. These people are not stable. They shouldn't be living in your community. They belong in treatment, whether it's mental health care or addiction or whatever, because, we know what goes on, and this kind of stuff goes on, which is not safe. We're talking about one of the busiest freeways in the U.S., he said, speaking of I-10. Solis, who represents the area where the fire began, said, "We know that more resources are needed in this area to help overcome the consequences of structural and systemic inequalities. No, that's not true. You just need to work on whacked out drug addicts living under your freeway system." Yeah. Structural and systemic inequality. You can't blame everything on that. You just can't. You can't. You just can't. It's a no-go. Everybody knows that. So when you're spewing that kind of nonsense, it's just that. It's nonsense. Of those evacuated during Sunday's fire, 8 moved into interim housing, 3 went to stay with friends, and 1 was reconnected with the Homeless Services Program, Solis said Wednesday. Business owners who subleased the storage properties said they voiced concerns for years about fire danger and other hazards related to camps in an industrial zone under I-10. Rudy Sarathan said the number of homeless encampments in the neighborhood has grown steadily since he began storing supplies for his business under the freeway in 2009. He said Sarathan Distribution, which provides office supplies and other items, couldn't get insurance due to concerns about homeless people starting cooking fires. But don't blame the homeless for setting a fire, because there's absolutely no reason for us to point the finger at the unhoused community. Yeah. His insurance wouldn't insure in that area because it's such a known quantity? What? Yeah. We're not getting the full scoop here, are we? Of course not. Of course we're not. He said he and other business owners made multiple reports asking city officials to act. And so city officials, they hold a big press conference. Yep, we know it's arson, but don't know who. Lord knows. Could have been the postman. Could have been a plumber just coming by on his way to his next call. Could have been anybody just, sitting down, doing a little pyromania, right? Pyromania. Def Leppard. We called every single week, he said, adding that eventually encampments were cleared, only to reappear again with days. That's the whack-a-mole, because unless you get these folks into treatment, they're not leaving the streets. This is where they want to live. The city didn't respond to our request for comment about whether they had received complaints or removed people from the site. Hey, has anybody else in the past said about this area that, maybe some fires are being lit now and then by the homeless? Yeah, mum's the word. We're not talking. No, we're going to ignore. you're going to have to, deal with another jurisdiction. I don't really know about the whole fire thing under the freeway. Yeah. Some business owners said that there have been other fires in the area, but the Los Angeles Fire Department couldn't immediately confirm that because there's so many damn fires being set across LA all over. That is what happens when you've got 76,000, was it? Was it 76 or 75.5? 75.5, 75,500 homeless people in the county, in LA County. Now, granted, LA County is a huge county, but, California's got a third of all the homeless folks in the entire country because you got easy living and you got good weather. I mean, high taxes for the tax-paying citizens pay for all this stuff for the homeless drug addicts living in their tent. So storage yards under highways are common statewide, with the money from the leases going to public transit. Newsom said the practice would be reevaluated following the fire. Yeah, don't expect any major changes. I mean, you can't really address this. You don't have the ability to really work at this problem long term. All you can do is a systematic whack-a-mole from underneath the freeway. Those people are going to disperse elsewhere. The minute you've got it cleaned out, they'll go right back under there. There's a homeless encampment over by where I have my boat in Seattle underneath I-5 that I look at every single time I go over in that direction. It's the East Lake neighborhood of Seattle. You got Westlake on the west side of Lake Union. You got East Lake on the east side. You got the freeway. There's a big overpass because you got the Ship Canal Bridge. And, they've done some massive sweeps. People always come back. But I have noticed in Seattle that underneath the freeway, they have been doing more and more sweeps. But so there's one area that's really kind of wedged underneath the freeway and the terrain, the site. You always got a bunch of, either campers or tents or whatever wedged in there because you got a roof right over your head. And so it's somewhat dry. Well, that area always seems to get cleared out just a little bit, maybe 100 feet to the north. There's a whole bunch of tents that have been sent up now. One guy's got a big American flag. It's like, all right, okay. Maybe he's a vet. I don't know. But there's, it's all this garbage. It's this little park area that's got a bus stop. Now it's just loaded with tents and it's got all this garbage and you just got sketchy RVs everywhere. It's Seattle. It's Freeatle. And you're like, okay, all right. Yeah. Ugh, painful. But there's no other area in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest that is like Lake Union. So that is why I am there. And at the end of the day, tents don't float. So there's that. All right, let's check out this story right here. It is, this is kind of an update on the Highway 10. Los Angeles Freeway is fully reopened after arson fire just in time for Monday morning's rush hour. That's good news. Los Angeles drivers returned to a much more normal commute Monday when an elevated stretch of a major freeway reopened well ahead of original estimates following a raging arson fire that shut down the roadway for more than a week. So we got Interstate 10 south. Yep, the 10 is open, carries 300,000 vehicles a day. And the early morning inferno on November 11th was fed by, so number 11, yeah, a little over a week, right? Was fed by flammable materials stored under the roadway in violation of a company's lease. Don't blame the state for not doing a damn thing about the homeless population around that probably set the arson, but blame the business under there that was in violation of a company's lease. Make them the bad guy. They're the bad actors. What a bunch of silliness. Because the state can't take any responsibility. Because if they did, they'd have to do something, and they're not doing anything. This is just going to keep on going. I don't see this situation really changing. What could change is you clear out everybody from under the freeways, and you make it impossible for them to camp there. All that means is that they're going to go somewhere to a nearby, because you're playing the whack-a-mole game. Plain and simple. That's all you got. You've got no other bullets. Not to mention in the chamber, you got no other bullets because you got nothing else to deal with the scenario. So expect more fires. I will report them for you right here on News for Reasonable People. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the like button. Thanks so much for supporting. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.